Okay, continuing where I left off. Sorry about that little break, but someone was at my door. So I'm continuing. The merchant sitting now at the shop of Bika Mule. He begins to make purchases, and Bika Mule has this suspicion that this person that's sitting in front of him is far wealthier than he is looking like. And they get on pretty well together. And the merchant has got a plan in his mind because what he wants to do is travel to his village and leave his little box of jewels with somebody and travel to his village, get some of his nephews and friends to come with him so that when he makes this final trek in his new nice garments to his own village, that he'll be safe. And so anyway, he's hoping that he can talk Bika Mule into holding on to his box of jewels. And Bika Mule, see, he's already tuned into this whole thing. And he even, the merchant had told him that he lived in the village, that's a few days march from where they're sitting. And Bika Mule says, oh, you've got to be careful on that road. There's a lot of thieves along it. And so anyway, at a certain point, the merchant turns to Bika Mule and says, Lalaji. Now, Lalaji is a phrase that bestows some closeness and is also a name that you'd use for a friend. So he turns to Bika Mule and says, Lalaji, I'm wondering if I could ask you a favor. You see, I have something that I'd like you to keep for me until I can return with some strong men to make sure I'm not robbed on the way home. And Bika Mule says, no, I'm sorry, I can't do that. I have enough trouble just taking care of my own things, and I would be afraid something might happen. And the merchant is like, oh, please, I've already revealed to you that I have something that's precious, and I don't want anybody else to know. And look at my situation here. Could you please make an exception and do this for me? And Bika Mule is like, no, I'm not going to do it. There's no way. And the merchant just, keeps after him, and the conversation goes back and forth, and Bika Mule is, no. But finally he gives in. And he takes the box full of jewels and he locks it in a case in his shop where he has other precious things. And the merchant gets on his way, and making his way out of the market, he makes purchases here and there and there and here. But he also has this funny feeling inside as he's leaving. Now, I'll tell you that in a bazaar like that, where people are selling their wares out on the street, and not only on the street, but back in their shops, and their shops are typically a little bit above ground level, you can bet you that every shopkeeper was watching that long conversation that went on between Bika Mule. And the truth was, just about all of them had thieving hearts and minds and were always trying to take advantage of people. But the biggest thief of them all was Bika Mule. Well, as the merchant went out of the bazaar, he inquired, about Bika Mule to the other shopkeepers. And the shopkeepers were on to what had gone on, knowing something must have gone on, hoping to maybe get in on some of the profit. They always returned with, oh yeah, Bika Mule, he's great. Honest as the day is long. You couldn't count on anybody as much as you can on him. And so the merchant felt some ease with having left all of the wealth that he had made in those 12 years, his life savings now that he was depending on being able to live comfortably for the rest of his life, he'd left it with Beeka Mule. So he was feeling like that was pretty good. Well, off he goes to his own village and is warmly welcomed by family and friends and returns within a week to claim his treasures. Now, when he gets there, he leaves the 12 or so men that had come with him in the big marketplace, do what they would do, and he goes to the shop of Beeka Mule. And when he gets there, he says, "Lalaji, hello." Beeka Mule doesn't pay any attention to him at all. He says, "Lalaji, good day." And Beeka Mule turns to him with an annoyed look on his face and says, "What do you want? You've said hello twice, and you can see that I didn't respond. But here you are, asking again, hello? Look, I have plenty of business taking care of my good and wealthy customers than to be dealing with some beggar who's, asking for charity. Get on your way." Well, the merchant is like, eyes open wide. He's shocked. He's, "Lalaji, don't you remember? Don't you remember me?" He's like, "Remember you? I don't have the time to remember every beggar that comes knocking at my door. But Lalaji, it was just some days ago that I left my box with those precious jewels in your care, and you promised so kindly to take care of these things until I could return." "What are you talking about?" said Beeka Mule. "Are you insane? Get out of here," he said. And with that, Beeka Mule kicked him. But the merchant would not go. He said, "Lalaji, it's me." Well, there were two of Beeka Mule's men who were standing there in the shop, and the two of them came over, and the three together threw the merchant out into the street as if you were throwing a sack of grain onto the floor of a barn. The merchant landed with a big burst of dust, and after a moment picked himself up, bruised and battered and bleeding, and stood up and stumbled over to a friendly wall close by. And we'll leave the story there. Oof. The merchant, distraught, and Beeka Mule, the thief.